Come on in, bestie. Welcome to StoryPod, where we do the doing of story development together. Brought to you by Creative BFF. Hello, you little cutie patootie. You little cutie patootie. Thank you for joining me. Was that kind of aggressive? In my term of endearment? Listen, thank you for joining me. My name is Ashley. If you didn't know, now you know. Okay? I'm feeling a little weird. Listen, forgive me. I love you. My name is Ashley. Thank you for joining me on the StoryPod podcast. I keep looking off to the side because my little green screen is not as tight. Listen, this is a homegrown, okay? A homegrown... like a Mickey Mouse operation right now, girl. Listen, this is real life, okay? Let's get real. Anyway, sorry. If you're just listening to this, I apologize. I'm gonna get back on track now. If you have, returning to focus, if you have a story question that I can answer here for you, I would love to do that. It is one of my favorite things to do as a story coach. Please feel free to shoot me an email at ash@creativebff.com, or you can go to my website, creativebff.com, and you can send me a little message in the contact section. Girl, sorry, I'm like, my forehead muscles feel like they need to be massaged. So please forgive me if I'm like doing all of this weirdness in the camera during this video. Like I said, we're getting real, girl. We're getting real. I'm comfortable with you now. Anyway, yeah, send me a message if you need to ask a story question, or if you need a little help, we can work one-on-one. I would love to do that with you. But in the meantime, in between time, girl, let's do another question from Reddit. This one is more of a writing question as opposed to a story question. And listen, I'm gonna do my best to answer it. This will be, of course, as everything is, this will be based on my opinion and my experience, and maybe what I suggest as I answer this question may not work for you. Find what works for you, girl. And make it happen, because this year is the year that you write your story. Okay, how was that for motivational content? Anyway, listen, let me get back on track, okay? Here's the question. Please forgive me. We are what? 2.5 minutes in, girl. Okay, here's the question from r/writing help by Mando's Other Alt. Question: creative writing with ADHD/ADD. Context: I've been struggling to write for 1 to 2 years now, but this book I want to write won't stay out of my mind. I have 2 chapters, 25 pages, and 3 short stories, 2 unfinished, unrelated to the book I want to write. I wrote 1 short story because it was a fun history assignment. We got to use AI, but me, having used AI for plot idea organization for the actual book, didn't use the AI at all for this. I only used 2 historical sources due to assignments saying I need to. I ended up only skimming and actually matching the setting and events pretty well. Read some of the source more after comparing it to my story. I had fun. I shared it with my professor and he liked it too. Anyway, sorry, I don't know how I can make my actual book as fun to write like my historical based short story was. Question: how do y'all get dopamine, aka motivation hyperfocus, to be able to sit down and write? Note: so far I have only gotten 2 paragraphs, one before yesterday and one yesterday. I'm trying to pat myself on the back for that. I even got my character some crushes, one with the future BF and one with the traitor. I have the Word doc on night mode so it's easier on the eyes. I also listen to music. So this is an interesting question, and I feel like my first angle of attack, if I'm reading this question accurately, if I read this correctly, so this might be a more specific answer to this as opposed to a general, what other writers can use and what I do in order to get motivated. But it seems like, if I read this correctly, it says they used AI for plot idea organization for the actual book that they've been trying to write for 1 to 2 years. And I feel like maybe that took some of the joy out of it, because what it seemed like, the contrast seemed like the story that this person, that the asker wrote for the assignment that they didn't use AI on, was more enjoyable than the one that they did use AI to help organize plot. Now I don't know if how far they used the AI in their book. If it was like, okay, they just kind of word vomited a bunch of ideas and just had the AI actually just organize their specific ideas, or if they used the AI for idea generation. Those are very specific questions that I don't have the answers for. But it may very well be that they took some of the joy and the excitement and the fun of the process out of it for themselves because they used AI at such an early stage. Now, I'm not commenting here on the use of AI in generating ideas and writing stories. I have done a couple of AI episodes. I do have one more that I want to use now that I've kind of been doing both a project that utilizes AI and a project that is just me coming off the dome writing. And I have specific feelings about that. That'll be for a later podcast. But that might be, number one, something to rectify. Maybe go back, revisit your story, and take out the parts that the AI wrote, or maybe try to rewrite some of the things, or maybe start fresh with some of the story. And maybe that will help revive some of your love for this story. Now, if it's not because AI sucked some of the joy of it out for you, which I don't think that it necessarily has to be the case. I think that you can very much use AI in a way that still allows you to enjoy the process, but maybe that would necessitate you deciding what part of the process of writing you love the most. Like, for example, if you love the idea generation and the plotting and the structuring of a story, but you don't actually like the writing part, that's tough, bro. I mean, then you can come in and, I'm not necessarily advocating for this, but you can plot out the whole story, do all the fun stuff, and then let AI kind of brute force the words on the page and then go in and touch it up and things like that, if you want to do that. Now, I feel weird. I have my little gutty whats are twisting by suggesting that, but hey, that could be an answer for some people, right? Or if the part that you love is the actual wordsmithery, you just like putting pretty words on the page and that's your favorite part, and it's kind of like pulling teeth to actually come up with the plot and do the world development and do all the back end pre-production type stuff, well, then maybe you have AI help you with that part, and then you come in and you write the pretty words. And then, my gutty whats are twisting for that as well. Side note, may I suggest you get a coach? Listen, I volunteer as tribute. Listen, I don't really promote my little situation as much on here in a real way, but if you have a hard time with structuring and you have a hard time with plotting and doing the character work and things like that, and you feel like you're getting stuck in places and you just maybe need an accountability partner, somebody that you can be accountable to that expects you to show up with stuff, listen, I volunteer as tribute. Or if you don't want to use me, find another story coach. That's totally fine, but maybe you just need somebody else to jump into the process to help you, and then maybe you won't need to use AI. Just a suggestion. I'm looking over here at the question again because I like to refer to the writing. I'm a reading type of person. Another, here's the not fun, the not fun answer, which I also struggle with, is you're not always going to have the motivation to want to sit down and do it. Now, the thing about writing, especially if it's not your job, if it's just a hobby, and this is kind of sort of the place that I'm in terms of like the writing projects that I have. It's not necessarily a job. It's not a requirement for me to have money to live my life, right? So this suggestion, maybe I don't use it as much as I should. I try to, right? But it's like sometimes you're not going to be motivated. And so you just develop the habit of sitting in front and you give yourself goals and you're like, today, this is what I want to get done. And maybe you're not doing it every day. Maybe you're like, okay, to make it as smooth of a process for you as possible, you schedule in on a day where you have more time and where you generally have the creative brain space and, like I said, a chunk of time in order to sit and focus on your story. Definitely, like you have already mentioned, put on some music that kind of helps get the juices flowing. That is very, very helpful for me. Sometimes it helps to think of the scenes that are the most fun to you, that maybe you're not there at that point in the story, but just thinking about these scenes and playing the dialogue over it in your head and doing that kind of thing, that being enjoyable, and it kind of gives you the warm and fuzzies in your creative core, that could be enough juice to kind of get you, okay, well, I want to get to that point, so let me get back in here and start writing. Side note, again, I've already said this, but like having a creative partner that you can turn to kind of help with it, somebody that you trust, doesn't have to be a story coach necessarily, but if you have a friend who is also creatively inclined, a family member that you trust with your story, and that will sit down with you and listen and be able to give you feedback on your ideas, as well as maybe adding, that can be that synergy of working with somebody else on your story can really reinvigorate or invigorate, either one, invigorate you for the first time or reinvigorate you, get you excited about your idea. Getting perspective from somebody else can really kind of give you that oomph you need, be the wind beneath your wings to kind of help you flow into, all right, let's be disciplined until you develop that discipline. It's kind of like, setting up a gym habit. Like for me, now I don't really talk about my lifey life, but I do go to the gym regularly. I do live a certain type of lifestyle, but that doesn't come natural to me, girl. I'm here trying to be a writing coach, I am a writing coach because I love creativity. I love reading. I love playing video games. I love watching great story content and creating it, right? I also have in my life loved to draw. Right now, not so much. That's a story for another time. A sad story to have a tiny violin, but all of these creative pursuits that I really love to do were very, very sedentary type things. So I wasn't someone, I would go outside and play, do all that kind of stuff, but I spent a lot more time sitting and being in my head as opposed to being an active person, playing sports, running and walking and doing all that kind of stuff. And so in order for me to develop a consistent habit around going to the gym, which was something that wasn't natural to me, or even just being an active person in general, because it's not just me being an active person is not just the 3 or 4 days that I go to the gym, but it's every day I'm trying to get a certain amount of steps, and it's gotten to the point where I have built habits. Now, here's a thing that you can take. I've built habits that support the goal of me getting a certain amount of steps every day. Let's just even remove the gym from it temporarily, right? My goal is I want to get X number of steps every day. And so I have developed a lifestyle. I have developed habits that allow me to achieve that goal in a way that doesn't feel like I have to stop and drop everything. And one really crucial way. Now, I wonder if this is going to help. I wonder if this will apply to writing, but I'm on this mode right now, so I'm going to finish my thought. I have combined things that I have wanted, habits that I've wanted to develop. For example, regular Bible time every day, right? Getting a certain amount of steps every day. So what I've done with those two things, but we'll keep it to the fitness, getting the steps every day, I've combined it with stuff that I already have to do every day, things that are already habits, and they reinforce each other. So for example, one of the ways that I reach my step goal is in the morning when I'm getting ready for work, I'm either marching or I'm pacing around as I'm doing my everyday normal stuff like brushing my teeth, washing my face, fixing my lunch, doing whatever doesn't require me to be still. Like if I'm not trying to put on some like eyeliner or whatever, it doesn't require me to be still. I'm going to march while I'm putting on my shirts, changing my clothes, whatever. I'm going to march or pace around. And that has gone so far in helping me to make sure I reach my daily goal of a certain amount of steps. Then just in my normal life, okay, if I'm out in the world, I'm going to purposefully park far away. Now that's something that people would say, but sedentary Ashley in the past was like, because we always tried to find parking spots that were as close as possible. Now I'm looking for parking spots that are far away, not excessively far away, but like far away, so I can get a good number of steps as I'm walking in. And that kind of relieves the search for like the closest parking spot possible and all that kind of stuff, because, okay, this is serving my goal of wanting to get steps, with the Bible time reading, having the Bible in my ear. I also have combined that with brushing my teeth in the morning. I listen to the Bible because I'm brushing my teeth, I'm marching in place, and I'm listening to the Bible. That helps to reinforce all of the habits. So even though this marching in place and walking around and pacing and doing all of that may not necessarily serve, because you can't necessarily write as you're doing it. You're not going to be able to sit at your computer necessarily as you're doing it unless you have a standing desk and like a little treadmill under. Maybe you can do that, but at least you can use that time to maybe get the juices flowing. Maybe you do want to set up a habit of, I want to go for a walk every day. Well, maybe during your walk time, you put in your headphones if it's safe for you to do so. Okay. If you live in a safe enough area, or you're doing it in a place that doesn't, that you're not having to look over your shoulder, put in your headphones, put on music that sounds like the world. And as you're walking, daydream. That's one of my favorite things to do. One of my favorite things to do is daydream. Okay. Or if you're driving home, if you can do this safely, okay, paying attention to the road, think about your story, do the music again, put on that story, and daydream about it so that your juices are already flowing for your story. And then when you get home, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write these ideas down, I'm going to take notes, things like that, right? Another aspect to this, so that's building habits in your life that support you in your writing practice. I can't tell you specifically what those would be for you. So for example, maybe I just said I can't tell you, but here's an example. If you know that every afternoon you like to have what my mother calls a demitasse, you have a little cappuccino, a little coffee, and you do that every day and you're purposeful with that. Maybe during that 15 or 30 minutes or however long you spend, maybe you're like, I'm going to combine my demitasse with also writing a paragraph of my book, or also working out a certain plot point that I've been stuck on. I'm going to think about my story as I'm having my demitasse. And hopefully the caffeine will probably help your brain start going a little bit more. But find another habit in your day, another thing that you do regularly in your life, whether it's every day or once a week or multiple times per week, and see if there's a way for you to combine that regular habit, that habit that you already have in place, with writing or story development or whatever thing you need to do for your story. Another related aspect to this, which is where I'm going to pull in bring back the gym analogy, is you just white knuckle it and you brute force it until it becomes a habit, right? Until you be consistent with your goal until it becomes a habit. So for example, when I first started going to the gym and I wanted to make it something consistent, what I started with was like, okay, I started getting personal training, but that's another thing. So that required me to be at the gym at least once, right? But when I told myself, all right, I want to start having a certain number of days per week, I'm going to start with 2 days a week. And girl, it was a challenge. And it's crazy for me to think of. It was a challenge for me at that time to get 2 days a week. And there were plenty of days where I did not feel like doing it. But what I told myself was I am going to exercise my discipline. And I know that self-control and discipline are bad words now in society, but they are good things. To have self-control and discipline around caring for your body, around what you eat, obviously not being crazy, not being disordered with it, but having a healthy amount of discipline and self-control is a positive and a good thing. Please believe me. So what I did was I am going to create discipline and self-control in this area, and I'm going to go to the gym 2 days a week. No questions asked, no excuses unless I am sick or I have something very, 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 very pressing and important that I have to get done at my job, because I would take all of my breaks in a day together so that I could go to the gym, because I know for me, and this is for me, I know for me, one of the ways that I supported myself in being able to make the gym a habit, and I'm sorry if I'm going off on a tangent, but this is tying back into writing. I supported myself by going at the time of day when I have the most mental and physical energy. So going like super, super early in the morning was not going to work for me, because I did not want to get up super, super early and then have to go straight to the gym at 4:30, right? Going after work was not going to work for me, because after work I'm tired and I'm mentally done with it and I just want to go home and I want to eat my dinner and I want to relax and take a shower and do all that kind of stuff. So trying to go after work was not going to work. So I had to find a way to get there in the middle of the day, like mid-morning is the best time for me. And thankfully, I'm not setting this up, I'm not propping this up as this is how you should do it, because not everybody has the same circumstances as me. So I'm not saying that as this is how you should do it. But my circumstances allowed that I have the job where I was allowed to compress all of my breaks together, as well as come to work early. I get to work 30 minutes early every day so that I have extra time for the gym. And I could take them all together in the morning and go to the gym at a time when it worked for me. And so that's why I'm saying, unless there's something very pressing and important at work for me to do that requires me to be there, or I am sick, those are my only two reasons that I will allow myself to skip the gym. And I just was like, okay, I don't feel like doing it, but it doesn't matter. Get in there. And typically what happens is once you get in there, or at least me, once I get in there, I don't want to waste the time I'm not here to just do nothing. I'm not going to sit around on my phone. I'm going to do something, and maybe it won't be the best workout ever. I'm not going to necessarily hit PRs and personal records every time and lift the heaviest that I've ever lifted and go the fastest as I've ever gone and push myself to the limit every time, but I was there. And even on days where it's like, I can't give 100%, or my 100% today is like my 50% yesterday, the fact of showing up built the consistency muscle. It built the discipline muscle. And so now I used that to build up to 4 days a week at the gym. I will allow a minimum of 3 days if necessary. So it's either 3 or 4 days at the gym. And that was just built through showing up when I didn't feel like doing it. So going back to writing, sometimes you just need to build the habit of, at this time on these days, I am planting myself in front of my computer. I'm going to put on my mood music. I'm going to get my cup of tea or my little snack or whatever it is that sweetens the deal for you. Like, I'm going to get my favorite tea, let me put on my favorite music, and I'm going to sit in front of this computer. And I'm not going to require that I write words of brilliance and emotional depth that can make even the hardest among us weep. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be the best thing that you've ever written. You don't have to write 3,000 words in that time, but building the act of showing up for yourself and for your story and being consistent, it will create that habit of sitting in front. And then once the habit of you, sorry to say it, but forcing yourself to sit down and turn your thoughts towards your story, even if you don't write a word on the page, then once it becomes a habit, part of the obstacle of it, because it's so regular, is eliminated. It's removed. There's no more willpower involved in you sitting down in front of the computer. And then because you're not using that willpower to force yourself to sit down, now you can have extra bandwidth to actually write something. And maybe what you will write is great. Maybe what you will write is terrible and you end up not using it. But a friend of mine said this great quote one time, and I can't remember who he said that it originated with, but what it is let inspiration find you working. And I'm like, ooh, that's fire and desire. Okay. So sit down, make it as comfortable for yourself as possible to be in that position, and you just build the consistency and the discipline. And that is not a fun thing, but once you've built that habit, it will serve you. And I would suggest you do it for other things in your life as well. That will help make you a better person. And then all of those things will reinforce you. Now, if you actually have diagnosed ADHD and ADD to the point where you have to take medication for it and things like that, I cannot necessarily speak to that. That will be something that you would probably need to talk to your care provider, your doctor, whoever's prescribing the medication, whoever you're talking to, in order to help you with this circumstance in your life, so that you can have support in that area. So what I'm saying and what I'm suggesting may or may not be feasible for someone who has diagnosed ADHD or ADD. So please forgive me. I hope that everything that I said just now didn't seem insensitive to you. If you are struggling with other circumstances that make it harder for you to sit down and do that. But I would say I'm 90% sure that there are writers who have those diagnoses and who still are able to finish books, and they find the strategies that they need in order to focus. So maybe part of your solution, maybe in addition to, the building consistency and building discipline and all of that kind of stuff and combining habits and things like that, maybe in addition to that, you can look up and research or ask a doctor or a therapist for additional strategies that you can use that are implemented in order to help people with ADD and ADHD to focus on things that they have to do in their life. And maybe the answer doesn't necessarily have to be medication. I don't know. Or maybe it is medication in combination with building habits and strategies that you can use that will help you with that. So that might have to be part of your, what is it called? Part of your writing practice, part of, the habits that you create around writing. And so I think that that's mainly what I wanted to say: building discipline, building consistency, combining habits to reinforce each other, and then also setting up the story in a way that's interesting to you, right? Start writing the story in a way that helps keep your interest as much as possible. So maybe not using AI and just doing it yourself. I'm not shading AI. I'm not shading you if you use AI to write. As I've mentioned before, I am using it in one project, and I'm not using it in another. So I'm not shading you if that's what you want to do. But for this person, if the way that you set up the story, the way that you are approaching the story is making it hard for you to keep your interest, maybe start it in a different way. Maybe what you need is to sit down and work out the structure, get that story structure tight, get your characters tight so that when you do sit down to write, you're writing from a place of knowledge and about your world. You have a sense of where you can take the story. That doesn't necessarily mean that you will be robbing yourself of the joy of discovery as you're writing. That still happens, but perhaps what you need is to have a solid foundation upon which you can, stretch your wings, right? And really flex those creative muscles. Or on the opposite end, maybe you've been a little too structured. I can fall into that category, right? And so maybe you do some exercises in which you are just like writing straight ahead. And I'm using that term because it was a term from animating straight ahead, where instead of doing keyframes, so for example, essentially setting the structure of the movement that you were animating, getting the gesture down, and then going in between, creating in betweens, which is another term from animation. You just animated straight ahead, meaning you went from frame 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6, instead of doing 1, 3, and 6, and then going in between and putting the poses that would complete the motion. So maybe you do the opposite in order to get the juices flowing. Maybe you do the opposite and you just, jump in, and see if that reinvigorates you and keeps you interested, So those would be some of my tips. What are your tips? I know I feel like I definitely belabored this point, but also hopefully there were some tips in there that can help you in other habits that you want to develop in your life besides just writing and being consistent with your stories. Like, apply it to anything that you want to build consistency in that will help your life and make you better, right? Where it works, maybe it doesn't work in every area, but in some it will. Anyway, girl, listen, I've been talking for a long time. Okay. I love you. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope that this was kind of a helpful episode. Let me know, what do you do if you're a writer? What do you do to be able to sit down and write or finish or just do the grind? Sometimes there is a grind in writing. A lot of it can be fun and beautiful and inspiring and just like, oh, that hits that spot, that creative chord just right, and it's wonderful. And then sometimes it's like, I just got to sit down and do the work so I can get back to the next time where I get to feel that, ooh, exciting moment, I do want to say this before I let go. I didn't express how wonderful and important it can be to have somebody that you can turn to in this process. For me, as a creative person, as a writer, when I would get stuck, when I would maybe not be as invigorated, not as interested in writing or completing or continuing a project, having a group of creative friends or even just one creative friend has been very, very invaluable to me, to be able to, like I said, reinvigorate. I keep using that word, but to get me excited again about the story, to kind of refresh. Sometimes you need a fresh pair of eyes. You need a new brain on the story. And that can help give you perspectives that you didn't see, that you missed, that were in your blind spot. And that can be enough to be like, ooh, that's interesting. Oh, what can I do with that? That can be very helpful. So if you can find someone in your life that can happily fulfill that role for you, I would say reach out and see if there's anybody who would do that, and be respectful of their time, of course, especially if you're not paying them. Okay. But if you don't have that person, again, that is what I love to do. So you can definitely reach out to me and I would love to help you. Set up a sesh. Let's set up a sesh. We can brainstorm. We can kind of get you reinvigorated. We can help you out of your stuck spots, So anyway, love you as always. Thank you for joining me. I will see you next time. Go for a walk, bro. Go for a walk. Go look at the sun. Okay? Get some fresh air. Love you. Bye.